I am here with James Beard, and we are going to be discussing the, I guess, the evolution of booking and just booking in general. And yeah, thank you for joining me again.
I'm glad to be here.
Um, so for those people who may not know your background in like booking, where like if you had to make yourself a booking resume, where would the booking resume start? And
Well, it would have to start in Dallas. I mean, I was involved in the booking there, and the creative part of that, the promotions there for several years, and then I worked over in Japan for several years, and I was involved in it over there somewhat, and came back, worked at USWA for a while. So I've been involved in the creative process of wrestling quite a few years. I started out just as a referee, but that was my goal really, to be involved in that part of the business, and eventually, after gaining a little trust, and kind of proving yourself a little bit, you got those opportunities. That's the part I really enjoy.
yeah, you and me both. So who would you say got your start in the allowed you to get your start in like the booking aspect of the business?
Well, I mean, I worked closely with all the bookers that were in Dallas. Gary Hart, Richard Smith, Red Van Steen was a big influence on me. Eddie Gilbert, Galiti was there for a while. Chandor Akbar, worked closely with Dutch Mantel in Memphis. Just all those guys I worked with, and I took something from all of them really. But they even I had to book myself a time or two, but there were also times when I was, I guess you call it, the assistant booker, that kind of thing. And I enjoyed both of those roles.
If you had to maybe pinpoint when the ideology of booking wrestling changed from the uh, one centralized booker to like the team of people, when would you say that maybe that change took place?
I don't know the exact date. It would have to be sometime in the I guess mid '90s. I know that, that of course was mostly due to what happened in WWL. It was LNE. I know that Pat Patterson and my friend Bruce Richard were pretty much the creative team for Vince for a long time, and I know that they were still doing that in the mid '90s. So sometime after that, when they started hiring writers, and they started scripting a lot more things, I think that's when it started to kind of evolve into what it is today. There was a time when you just had one booker, and that booker, depending on his personality and how his philosophy worked, he would listen to different people, but he was the guy that pulled the trigger. And there's a different feel between booking and writing. Booker kind of goes by ear a little bit. The writing thing is a little bit more specific, a little bit scripted.
Mm.
It's a matter of opinion, I guess, about what you like best. My personal opinion is that wrestling is better when it was in the Booker philosophy that instead of the writing. The writing takes like the natural progression of not only the characters and the wrestlers, but also the natural progression of the storylines and the action.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. Um, one thought that popped into my head because you mentioned Memphis. Um, were you there when Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett alternated booking?
No, when I was there, Jerry Jarrett had pretty much retired. He still owns part of the business, but Jerry Lawler was there, and that's a long story. It'll be in my next book, but it was it was a situation where Dutch Mantel was actually from while I was there, and I helped Dutch.
Mm. Yeah, because Dutch made Memphis made mention to that in a interview we did with the guys over at Kayfabe Commentaries. His time in Memphis before he went to Puerto Rico.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Now to maybe change the focus of this interview. What do you when the fans say that they could do a better job booking than the people who are booking? What do you have to say about that when you've actually been in that position where you've booked?
Well, it's kind of a line you have to walk. And I don't want to downplay the importance of fans. Fans' opinions are important, but the fact is fans don't really totally understand it. And I mean, there are some that understand more than others, obviously. And we have this faction of fans these days that's kind of developed over the years that we call the smart mark, and they tend to think that they know more than the people who are running the business. And in all honesty, sometimes they have better ideas, but the truth is that if you're booking or responsible for the creative process, you can't allow fans to dictate where you go. You have to listen to them, and you have to make them watch your product, and you make them emotionally invested in your product. But you don't do that by just doing what they want you to do. Sometimes you do just the opposite. And I think it's important that you pay attention to what the fans are buying into and what they're interested in. But when you start allowing them to dictate the direction, you no longer have a product that you can really create emotional investment in, and you can create drama in, and it becomes too predictable. And that's basically what you have today. I mean, you have a lot of what you see on TV today is basically like a rock concert. It's like going to an event. The fans know pretty much what the wrestlers are going to say, and they know all their signature moves and all their signature phrases. And it's like going to, like I said, a rock concert where they expect certain things, and they always get it. And my philosophy is totally different. And I believe that fans should be involved in an emotional way, but not necessarily knowing what's going to happen next and expecting certain things and getting it all.
Yeah, I agree. Some fans think that they well, do you think it all goes back to the fans thinking that they could do better and that, changing their perception of what they're watching?
Well, it's exposing too much of the business and too much of the inside of what's going on and what's going to happen, and all of that has led to that sort of feeling, I think, a lot of times. And I'm not trying to. I'm not one of these guys that thinks that because I'm in the business I know more than everybody else. It's not that. It's just the fact that that's not really how this is supposed to work. It's not going to a movie. I mean, if you know the ending already, you know all the details, then what's the point? And to me, wrestling is best when you create situations that fans really want to see what happens next. And I don't see that very often.
True, very true. Um, would you say that wrestling was better off with a creative team, or is better off with a creative team, or was better off when they had one person calling the shots?
Well, the creative team booking kind of came about. I think probably with WCW where that all kind of started. And the truth is that when you've got 4 or 5 guys with big egos involved, especially if they're workers themselves, and they're trying to dictate the creative process of a wrestling promotion, you're going to have problems. And I think that's part of what happened there. You ended up with the inmates running the prison, and instead of a guy who's not attached or has, I guess, a motive or his ego is not such that he feels like he's got to do everything to serve himself. And, those guys tended to fight amongst themselves, and you don't get too much done if that happens. I think that a good booker, one guy in charge that pulls the trigger, who's willing to listen to all those questions and listen to other people, is probably the best situation in wrestling. That creative team thing, where everybody's equal, just doesn't seem to work.
I completely agree, and with what you just said, I'm gonna throw out 2 names for you, 2 guys who booked or were the head of creative or whatever you want to call it. The first name is Adam Pearce, as he was the second booker for Ring of Honor. And the reason why I bring up Adam Pearce is because when he took over Booker for Ring of Honor, he took himself off television, meaning he wasn't an active wrestler anymore.
Right.
Do you think that's the right way to go?
Well, I'm not real familiar with that situation exactly. I do know enough about Adam to know that number one, he's a smart guy, and I know that he cares about the business, and I think that, and I also know that he's not one of these guys that has this huge ego that just has to be satisfied. So I think that a guy that's willing to do that when he's responsible for the creative process is probably putting himself in a better position than someone who's trying to work to do that at the same time. Because even if you're not pushing yourself, there's going to be a perception out there if you do certain things that from the other wrestlers that you're doing it for a reason that's not necessarily for the overall good, but for your own good. And sooner or later, you're going to run into that problem. And I think Adam was very smart in moving himself out of the active role while he's involved in creative. So I don't see a problem with a guy doing that, and especially if it's a guy who's got good ideas and understands how to deal with people and that sort of thing. And Adam's one of those guys. So I think that was a very intelligent, mature move.
The other name that pops into my head with the person who basically did the opposite, and this is no offense intended to the person who did it, but it's Ric Flair when he worked as the head of creative in the late 80s, early 90s, and then again in the mid 90s for WCW.
Well, that was another one of those situations at WCW where the inmates were running the asylum or the prison or whatever you want to call it. Rick had no business being the guy pulling the trigger, because even if he were doing all the right things and making all the right decisions without his ego being involved, there's going to be a perception by some of the guys, especially somebody that high profile, that he's doing it for his own good, and that's an inherent problem he's going to have no matter what. But the fact is guys, a lot of guys like Rick who've been pushed so much and are always on the top of the card and always attention. Generally, their vision of wrestling is limited to what got them over. I mean, it's like all these groups that hire guys like Hulk Hogan and some of these other high profile guys to come in and tell them what to do. The truth is, they don't know what to do. All they know is what got them over. They know what made them famous, and they know what worked for them, but they don't understand the overall process of making a program work and a whole promotion work. And usually that gets tainted because of that. And it's just a bad idea.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. Now, let's spend a little bit of time maybe discussing different booking mentalities. And the one I want to start with first is the, I don't know if you know the term Crash TV.
It's probably one of those terms, like a lot of the wrestling terms that are used today with some of the younger guys. When I first got back into the business after kind of laying out for a while, I heard guys talking about things like back elbows and all this kind of stuff, and I'm going, what the hell is a back elbow? Well, it's just an elbow, So some of those terms may be referring to some of the same things that I already know about, but I don't know what the heck the term is.
It's basically WWE's how WWE booked their television back in the early the Attitude Era.
Okay. Yeah. Well, here's the thing about what WWE did and still does. Basically, their booking is based on hot shotting, and that's an old term. So I hope you understand what that is. And what that is that every week you do something to try to outdo what you did last week. Kind of doing something with a reasonable cost. And to get a rating spike, or they book off segments and segment ratings and that sort of thing. And basically, hot shotting is when you're doing it for that purpose, and you're not really creating a long-term angle. And basically, that's what WWE's booking philosophy has been for a long time. They have to outdo themselves every week. They have to do something to pop the house. They have to do something to bring that rating up every week to satisfy their commercial people, their some of them now their investors. So it's that philosophy usually makes yourself into a corner at some point. It gets to a point where you just can't do anything more to add to what you've already done. So you've got to be careful about how far you take things, and every week you kind of take it a little further. And hot shotting just doesn't work a long-term thing, and I think they're feeling the effects of that right now. That's why the ratings go down, but they can't do anything.
That actually makes a whole lot of sense. That it does. In terms of the that territory, WWE's territory, even though territories have been are somewhat of a passé term now because the system has been broken up for almost 2 decades. Do you think, has the New York territory always had the philosophy that WWE has now, or did it used to be different?
Well, I mean, they were. I'm not an expert on WWF or WWE. Actually, with WWF back then, but they were known as a big man territory back in those days. They were, they liked the big brawler type guys and that kind of thing. And that was Vince McMahon Sr. and the Junior's first philosophy when he started out. And so, it's changed since then. I mean, now, they went through they've gone through changes every time ratings go down, and every time the society changes a little bit, they've adjusted to it. You had the Hulk Hogan era, with all the superhero thing, and they kind of morphed that into a comic book character era, and then they went into because of the steroid problems and all that, they reverted back to more wrestling with Bret Hart and kind of guys, the smaller guys that were natural looking, and then they went into the Attitude Era with Steve Austin and Rock and all those guys, and that's all a response to outside pressures, society or ratings going down or whatever, and the competition, and the competition is no longer there, so they just respond to other outside pressures like society changing or what they accept and that kind of thing. They've gone through this other era where it's PG for a while, and so they've always adjusted, changed, and shifted, and to Vince's credit, he's generally been successful doing that. But it's a tightrope you have to watch. You have to be careful with it, and at some point you may make a mistake and go downhill. And when you don't have competition to tell you what you're doing wrong, then you're out there on your own, and that's kind of where they are now.
Very true. Do you think that when they became a publicly traded company, do you think that was a mistake?
Well, I don't know. That's a personal thing. I mean, it's that's a business decision that Vince made, and it made his company look bigger, but it also created different responsibilities and different pressures, and sometimes you react to those pressures, and it's not necessarily the best thing for wrestling. It's just a business thing, and you look at it both ways. I mean, I'm sure it made them all a lot of money, but it also put them in situations that sometimes it may be a little uncomfortable for them.
Now to get away from talking about Vince to make it where it's not an interview about WWE. Let me dig back and say that people always said that there is people who classify as good finish guys, good just good bookers in general. What in your mind are qualities that a good booker has?
Well, in my opinion, and like I say, it's my opinion because there are different kinds of guys who have been successful. So in my opinion, the best bookers are the guys who are willing to listen to other people and understand the current atmosphere and being able to read the fans a little bit and know what's needed to make them interested in your product. I mean, that's part of the creative thing, and then you've got to be able to deal with a lot of different personalities. I mean, you can't deal with everybody the same way. You've got a lot of different egos and a lot of different type of personalities that you're working with, and you have to understand all that and be able to, I guess, kind of be kind of a mediator sometimes. It's not an easy job. You have to build all those things together and come up with a product that everybody's working together toward a certain goal. And the best bookers generally take in advice and ideas from all those around them that they trust, and they're able to kind of, adjust those things and tweak those things and make them do what they want them to do and pull the trigger. I think it's important that you have a guy that's able to do that and is willing to do that.
That's yeah. If I said the term good finish guy, who would be the first name that pops into your head?
Oh my goodness, there's been a lot of them. I mean, the guys I worked with, Gary Hart was excellent with that. Eddie Gilbert was incredible with that kind of thing. Good finish guys are guys who understand that understand that you got to know where you're going to go, and then you know how to get there. That was one of the things that I thought I was always pretty good at. And that's really kind of how I got involved in the creative process, because I'd have ideas that, hey, why don't we try this and try this? Maybe this will get us there, and that kind of thing. And you have to know the process of telling a story to get the point over. The best finished guys are the guys that understand how to tell that story. There's been a lot of them.
In terms of, I may have asked you this question before, but if I did, I apologize. In terms of good bookers to never work with Vince in a creative sense, meaning as a non-active wrestler, who would once again be the first person that pops into your head?
Say that again. I'm not sure I understood the question.
In terms of not being an active wrestler, who in your mind was like the best booker never to work for Vince?
Never to work for Vince? Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, that's probably Gary Hart, the first one to come to mind. Gary, they talked about Gary going up there a few times, and it kind of teased it a little bit, but he never worked for Vince. And, of the guys that I personally knew and worked with, he'd be probably the first one I think of. Because just about all the rest of them worked for him at some point.
Yeah.
Either his talent or some process, some position.
Well, what about making it a little less broad? What about picking out somebody who didn't work for Vince or Jim or the Crockett's, or not the Crockett's, Ted Turner? Because I know Gary did.
It's hard to say. You're talking about as a booker or as a talent, period?
As a booker.
As a booker?
Yeah.
I don't think Dutch Mantel ever worked as a booker, Turner or Crockett.
No, he didn't.
I've got a ton of respect for Dutch. I think he's one of the most creative and knowledgeable guys I've ever been around. So I guess he'd be one that would come to mind for sure.
How do you feel about how Dutch is being handled, let's say, with Vince up in New York?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that, Michael.
How do you? What is your opinion on Dutch's current standing with WWE?
Are you talking about using him as a talent?
How they use him in general, because I don't think he's like doing. I mean, I can't speak for what he's doing backstage, but to my knowledge, he's not doing anything backstage, and how. So I guess we can speak on what we can speak on of him, how he's being used as a on-air talent, yeah.
Well, I mean, Vince is a complex guy. He's very, very, very smart. He knows his business. He knows he has more knowledge and more understanding of things than he generally gets credit for. And I think he felt that he needed to back off a little bit as far as the management role and start moving Hunter and Stephanie into that position a little bit more. But I have a suspicion that Vince has never been that far away from it. I don't know that, but I don't believe he's ever not had a little bit of a finger on things. And as far as the way he's being being used right now. You know, it's kind of like that hot shotting thing I talked about earlier. They're doing it because the ratings were horrible, and they needed something to bomb the house, and that's something that's worked before. They brought it back in and did it again. I don't think it's a long-term fix for anything. I think people will, you know, they've already seen it. I mean, how many times are you going to do the same thing, and how many ways can you do it? You know, so he's a real interesting character, and an interesting person. I've got a lot of respect for him in a lot of ways. I don't like everything he's ever done, but you know, as far as his knowledge and his success goes, I respect everything he's done. You know.
Now, you can if you don't want to answer this, you can just say you don't want to answer it. But
Okay.
There have been many people who have said that Vince, or it may not be Vince, but it could be somebody there, namely a certain, television producer, that someone there is not the biggest fan of Southern people. Do you think that has anything to do with Dutch?
I don't know that it does now. I do know that when Vince Russo was there, he was not a fan of that. He didn't like. I'll just put it this way: he wasn't a fan of anybody other than his regional type character, or his regional type, his extreme type character that he liked. I know that was the case when he was there. I don't know that it's the case now. I don't believe that. So, but I don't think Vince feels that way. Vince is, one of my best friends in the business is John Layfield, and he and John are very close. And John's as Southern and as Texan as anybody can ever get. So, in fact, John called me just the other day, and we were talking about Vince. And I mean, my goodness, he's got he thinks so much of him. I can't even describe that here. But so I don't believe that's coming from Vince at all. It might be coming somewhere else, but not from him.
You heard it here first. Quelling the rumors plaguing the IWC.
I'm talking about Vince McMahon, not Vince Russo, by the way.
Well, we that's what we do here. We quell rumors plaguing the IWC.
Yeah.
Now, to jump back for a sec with Gary Hart, that is. It was, I know you weren't in World Class at the time, but was Gary the one who thought of who laid out and thought of the Von Erich Freebird feud, or was that somebody else?
No, Gary started the feud. It was, Gary left shortly after that for a while.
Yeah.
But Ken Mantell, actually was the booker during a lot of that time. But yeah, Gary was the one that actually came up with the idea and started.
Well, I didn't know that.
He actually brought the Freebirds in. And he actually is the one that put, and originally it was just Michael and Terry. And I think Bill Watts might have used Buddy with them for a little bit. And when Michael and Terry were talking to Gary about coming in, Gary wanted them to bring Buddy in with them as well because of Buddy's skill as a worker. And so he was the guy that brought him in.
Mm-hmm. And he was the one that ended up bringing him back, right?
I don't really remember that. I don't remember if Gary's the one that brought him back or they just. It happened 2 or 3 different phases. There was a while when Buddy kind of stayed around. He hardly ever leave. He didn't leave. He stayed and kind of morphed into a manager for the Samoan SWAT team for a while, and then Jerry came back for a while, and they had Iceman involved in it, and Angel of Death involved in that angle, and then Michael came back on his own and came back as a babyface basically. So it kind of all melds together there a little bit. So I don't know if Gary actually brought them all back like that, but they were gone for a while, then they came back in Global,
Mm-hmm.
and Gary was around then, but that was kind of a combination of Gary and myself and some other guys that wanted them back.
Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of I actually have in the past read Bill Watts' book, and he said in the book that he did put Buddy with Michael and Terry because he felt that Michael was too green at the time to work, and he thought that Buddy and Terry were better, and Michael was better off as being a manager. Would you agree that with that at the time when even when they first came into Texas, that Michael was a little green?
I don't know if green is the right word. Michael's one of those guys that developed into a good worker. And when he first started out, he was more of a personality. He could talk, obviously. He had a charisma that was out of this world. And he was an important part of the team, as far as he and Terry were concerned. But as far as the technical aspects of working, he wasn't that great. And it took him a few years to get to the point where, in all honesty, I think he's underrated now. I think he became a really, really good worker. He may not have been a great wrestler, but he was a great worker. And I think that's what Bill was seeing. He saw Michael as a character and a mouthpiece, and they needed a technical guy to come in, and a guy that Buddy played a lot of different roles there. I mean, he was a guy that you could beat every night. He never lost his seat, and that's valuable in a team like that. So
Very.
So he I think Bill was pretty much a genius at bringing Buddy in with him, and he just fit right in. I mean, Buddy was different. Terry and Mike are Southern boys. They're full-blooded Southern guys, and then Buddy is he's from Chicago, or Illinois, somewhere up there, and he was a totally different personality, a totally different character. Everything was different about him, but he just fit in. And he would play that role in the three of them that was really invaluable. They had to have him, and I think Bill was, like I said, I think he was a genius in putting those guys together that way.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more, and as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Now I think it would be maybe a good time to get your thoughts on some bookers.
Okay.
I'll say a name. You say your thoughts on the person. I guess we'll kick it off with Ken Mantell.
Ken had some success in Dallas. He was a smart guy, a little bit more political, I think, than some of the other bookers I know. I give him a lot of credit for keeping some things together down there. I don't necessarily think Ken was the greatest booker in the world, but I think he was effective, and he was able to get a lot out of what he had to work with. So, I'm not going to say anything negative about him at all, but I just, if you compare him to like Gary Hart, I think there's a big difference in Ken and Gary.
Do you think Ken would? Do you think that Ken was able to carry the territory after Gary left, or was that too high of a, you know,
Well, I mean,
person?
It's kind of the proof is in the pudding. I mean, there was so much momentum built. Gary was there, and world class was flying so high and everything, and then when after Gary left, I mean, he didn't have to do a whole lot to keep that going for a while, because it was so hot.
Mm-hmm.
In Ken's defense too, there were things that happened, like David's death and Gary's motorcycle accident and Kevin's state of mind during that time. I mean, there were a lot of things to deal with that made it difficult. So, I have to give him credit for keeping things going as well as he did, with all those things going on.
Mm-hmm. The next person is Mike Graham.
Well, I never worked with Mike. I mean, everything I've heard about him has been good. I know a lot of guys that do him well and work with him, and they were, he had his father was one of the best promoters ever, and a smart guy, and I guess he learned his lessons well. So I wish I could speak with more authority about him, but other than what I've been told by guys who work with him, I don't know. I mean, all I know is that he was well thought of in general.
Mm-hmm. I think you might have worked with this guy down in Memphis. I'm not sure. But I'll ask your opinion. Paulie Dangerously.
Paulie is a smart guy. He's I've got a lot of respect for Paul. I mean, I knew him. When he started started working with ECW, he actually called me about coming in, but that was before it became really extreme. It was, I think, Eastern Championship Wrestling or something like that. Paul is one of those guys that's very creative. He has a way of getting along with the talent, and that's a big part of booking. That getting that relationship built and that trust built, and he was very good at that. Got a lot of respect for Paul, and then plus he's a heck of a character. I mean, he can talk circles around most people.
Yeah. Did you, when you met Paul, did you get the feeling that he had maybe like difficulty delegating or like trusting people?
I think that's one of the things about booking that's a personality thing. It's kind of weird because we all think of guys like Bill Watts being a domineering guy and a demanding guy, and he was that. But he also delegated authority. He had guys like Ernie Ladd and Grizzly Smith and Akbar and other guys that worked for him and with him that he trusted to handle his booking and handle his talent. And he always was a guy that was on top of it and pulled the trigger. He listened to all the ideas and did the things that I described. I think a booker should do. And he took all that information in and then tweaked it, made it work for himself. And he was very good at delegating those things. And I think the good bookers are the ones that can do that. You have to trust some people somewhere. Because no one person is going to have all the right ideas and all the great ideas. You're just not. And even if you've got a great idea, there's always somebody out there who can say, "Hey, well, that's great, but why don't we do it this way a little bit?" And then you go, "Oh yeah, that might even be better." So, there are some guys I've known that had a difficulty in accepting those things, and I think that's probably something that would end up paying in the corner because you only only get so many ideas, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I didn't work with Paul in that situation, so I can't speak to that. But you know, if that was the case, then that that may have been an issue for him.
Now, I know you said that Paul called you to work or to come in to work before they made the switch over to Extreme Championship Wrestling. But if
That was actually they hadn't even started yet. They were starting.
Oh, so he was. This is around the time that he took over for Eddie.
You know, I'm not sure. I can't remember all the details, but they were just beginning that promotion.
But after, with how certain people perceived ECW that were in the business, would you have worked with Paul if he brought you in say, a creative sense?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Got a lot of road noise. Folks are listening to this. They hear some weird noise because I'm in the truck. I got a little road noise. Say that again, Michael.
If Paul asked you to come in and work for ECW when it was Extreme Championship Wrestling, in a creative sense, do you think you would have been able to work the ECW style because of the similarities it had with Texas?
I could have done that. I mean, my problem with ECW was that the only thing that was similar about that in Texas is the fact that in Texas, you know, you had a lot of fighting and brawling and that sort of thing involved, but you also had a lot of good technical wrestling. And I know they had that too, you know, but they took things a little further than I would have ever taken. And they did the same thing that I've talked about in other situations. They ended up hanging themselves in a corner. I mean, you can only go so far with things. You know, if you don't respect some of the finishes and some of the moves and things that traditionally were effective, and you just blow them off as a high spot, then at some point, you know, the only thing you got left for a finish is death. You know, and then I would have had a problem with them progressing to that point if I had been involved. You know, so I guess I'm just too much into being logical and believable about things, and that would have been a problem for me.
Seems like a lot of people would have had a problem with that, or had a problem with that were, you know, not in the company. Another booker that popped into my head that I know worked with in Memphis and probably worked with in Texas and even maybe worked with in Smoky Mountain. I don't know if you worked in Smoky Mountain.
I didn't work for promotion, but I did work for Jim Crockett when he was doing some things with Cornette. So I did some things with them, but I didn't work for them.
I just wanted to get your thoughts on Jim Cornette.
I know that was something. I love Jim Cornette. He's believe it or not. I mean, I know Jim is opinionated, and sometimes he's brash, and you know, he definitely would tell you what's on his mind. But he's one of the smartest guys I've ever been around, and I would work with Jim Cornette in the drop of a hat, anytime, anywhere, any place. In fact, I have done so recently, and I will do so again with you all. He's just, to me, he's refreshing and smart, and he's always wants what's best for the business, and that's all you can ask out of a guy.
Do you think that sometimes Jim is too critical of the business, that it seems like he only says what's wrong with the business, he never says what's right or how to fix what's wrong?
Well, I mean, you can have that perception if you believe what's happening is it's like kind of like Donald Trump nowadays. I mean, there's some people who like him and some people don't because he says what's on his mind, and he's just, I think he's, whether you agree with him or not, I think he's probably being honest in how he feels. And to me, I would much rather be around and work with somebody who's honest and willing to speak out than someone who's just going to be, I guess, so political that they'll just go along with anything. And Jim is one of those guys who has a strong belief system about what's right and what's wrong. And the truth is probably 99.9% of the times I agree with him. I may not I may not speak out exactly the same way he does, but a lot of times I'll say the same things he's saying. I just say them in a different way. I think that's probably what rubs people wrong, because Jim doesn't filter what he has to say and just doesn't try to be too politically correct with it, even though when he's right. So I don't necessarily think he's been too critical. I think he just speaks the truth in the way he sees it. And in all honesty, I wish more people would listen to him.
The next name that I had in mind was Grizzly Smith.
Yeah. I work closely with Grizzly. I respected him about as much as I ever did anyone. Grizzly is one of those guys who just got along with everyone. He had a way of talking to guys and getting things out of guys without yelling or screaming. I don't know that Grizzly was the greatest idea guy in the world. It's kind of like Akbar. They may not have come up with a ton of great original ideas, but they always knew what was right and what was wrong. So if somebody like myself were to come in and go, Grizz, why don't we try this and try this and try this? And he'd go, well, that's a good idea, and that probably would work, but can we do it like this? And what he would say would always be right. He'd always understand the fallacy in your thinking if you were coming up with something that needed to be tweaked a little bit or something. So Grizzly was just a smart guy. He was probably the perfect guy for doing what Bill Watts had him doing. He was kind of following Bill's instructions, but he was also smart enough and savvy enough to know what was right and what was wrong. Plus, he had the kind of personality that the guys could get along with and respect. So I can't say enough good things about Grizzly Smith.
Now, to somebody that many people don't even know did creative, but know him as one half of Demolition. Bill Eadie.
Well, I can say the same things about Bill that I just said about Grizzly, except Bill was a lot more creative. Bill came up with a lot of good ideas.
Okay.
Good for people. He was a very smart, creative guy, and for those that don't know, probably one of the top 4 or 5 best big men that ever worked in this business.
So you'd say that instead of maybe taking the direct approach of calling the guy out, he would be more of the guy who, maybe did it in his office, or
I'll tell you a story that's going to be in my next book.
Okay.
This is during the time when he was in Clover, and I was working in Japan. So it wasn't like I was a green guy. I didn't know what I was doing or anything. But there was a match between John Tatum and Gary Young, who are 2 guys that I've worked with 1 million times and knew very well. And we were doing a TV shot, and they had a finish, and I don't know what I was thinking about. I have no idea. My mind went somewhere else, and I missed on and hit the finish way it should have been hit. But it that way. We covered it up. We went through it, got out of it, and nobody probably knew except for us and Bill. And because he's the one that gave the pictures. And we went back to the office, and he just called me over and never changed the expression or anything. He just said, he said, James, he said, you're a great referee, and you're way too good to make that mistake. And, he said, those guys were working, they were trying to get to a point, and we missed that point. I said, he covered it up, nobody's going to know. We really didn't get out of it what we should have gotten out of. And I felt like about 2 inches tall. And I can assure you, I never missed anything like that again after that. And I never got yelled at, never got sprayed, just between he and I. And nobody would have ever known it if I didn't tell the story myself. But that's the kind of guy he was, the way he handled people. And to me, that was more effective. If somebody yelled at me, I probably got, pissed off or something, screw you, But he just, the way he handled it, the way he went about that with anybody who, if he needed to do that, it was, it was an education to me on how to handle people. And I respect him a lot for that.
Yeah. Do you think that do you think that people should be more aware of, like, bookers like Bill who may not have booked a major territory but were incredible at the job?
Well, you would hope so, but that's of course the territories are gone, and that what's done is done. But if Bill had been given the book in one of the major promotions back in those days, he would have been excellent at it. Of course, he was back in those days. He was an active wrestler too, so it would have been hard for him to do that. But if the territories were still alive and somebody needed to see somebody who was great at that job, that's the kind of guy you want in there. And I think he would have been excellent anywhere he went if that had been the case. And there's a lot of guys out there who are smart, that never even dealt in the booking situation. They just work, but they come up with great ideas, and always seem to know the right things to do. And I work with a guy right now, Rob Conway. I mean, he's a two-time NWA champion. He's still active. He's still working. And I talk to him regularly. We talk about booking. We talk about all kinds of creative ideas and business ideas and that sort of thing. And he's so smart and so intuitive about what's right and what's wrong, and he sees all these little details and things. Sometimes, I'll talk to him about something and have an idea, and then he'll tweak it a little bit, and I'm going, why didn't I think of that? And I've been doing this for 30-something years, so, there's guys out there like that too that never got into that part of the business that are valuable because they have a voice if you listen to them, and pay attention and let them express themselves. They're very valuable to have around, and guys like Rob are they're just they're a blessing to be with. I tell you that. So so it's not just about bookers; it's about everybody in this business. If you're a part of it and you have something to offer in a creative sense, then then that's what you want.
In terms of the term booker, do you think that now with so many major companies going with a creative team, do you think that the term booker is like a passé term now, or has the independents kept the term alive?
Well, it's kept alive in some of the independent territories, independent promotions. You know, and we've got 28 promotions, I think it is, in the NWA right now, and they're all different. You know, some of them have a booker, some of them have two or three guys that book it together like a committee type thing, and you know, there's all kinds of ways of doing it, and there's a couple of them that even have what they call writers. You know, I don't know that it's passe. I don't think it's a role that should be forgotten or not used anymore. I think that's the best way to handle the creative process in wrestling myself. You know, if you've got one guy who has the ability to oversee the whole promotion and understand what's best for the whole promotion, and is able to listen to ideas and tweak them and find a way to express them, you know, in the matches and in the angles, and then pull the trigger to do that. I think that's a role that is probably underutilized, but I think it's one that best suits the wrestling genre.
Well, how I end every interview is, do you have any upcoming appearances that you want to let the fans know about?
Well, I've been taking it kind of easy. I didn't book anything. I didn't take any bookings at all in December. My next booking is January 30th in Tennessee for NWA Mid-South. And after that, this year I'm planning on kind of slowing down just a little bit as far as referee role goes. I might take a couple weekends a month and work. And, you know, we've got in April. April's going to be a busy month. We've got an event going on in Fort Worth that coincides with WrestleMania on that same week, and we're going to be bringing in a lot of the top NWA guys and promotions, and we're going to have some matches. We're going to have some personal appearances, and you know, some of the old traditional NWA guys will be there, and in fact, Jim Cornette will be there, and Stan Hansen and quite a few other guys. But we've got that, and then of course in April, the second week in April, I'll be at Cauliflower Alley. I've been honored to receive an award there this year, and I'll be there for that. And we'll be having NWA matches during that, the first 2 days of that also. So I'll be pretty active there that week, and then I'll be going to Tulsa for a match immediately when I get back. So I'll be pretty busy in April, but I'm kind of taking it a little bit easy, and I got the second book coming out hopefully before April, and so I'll be kind of busy trying to promote that a little bit. So you know, you kind of keep up with me on Facebook. I don't have a web page or anything, but that's the best way.
That was my next question. Any social media you want to plug?
Well, that's not all I do. I did. If you want to keep up with me, I have my personal deal on Facebook, and then of course the NWA web page and the MWA Facebook page. Those are the three things. And if you're looking for a book, then you can go to jamesbeardbook.com, and that'll take you to my publisher's web page. And you know, I've still got that first book out there to sell too. So you know, anybody wants a copy of that, go to that, and, or see me in Vegas.
Well, my friend, I thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Michael.
And I'll see you next time.
All right, Mike. Take care, buddy.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.
And I thank you for joining me. Till next time. Peace.